Welcome to another edition of 100% Canucks on a Friday. Landon Ferraro is in Toronto. John Shannon's in Toronto. Well, there you go. What's it like to be be the big TV star this week? Come on now.
It's been a lot of fun. I'll be honest. It was, it's like you're kind of, even though you're doing NHL games in Vancouver, and I love doing the intermission panels. But it's like you're kind of getting called up from the American League to the big boy club, come to Toronto, and it was a lot of fun. They were really welcoming and made it as smooth as it could be. It's a different animal here, but it's been a blast. I've had a ton of fun. I'm back on tonight before getting back to Vancouver to Saturday morning and doing the radio color for Vancouver, Montreal.
Okay, so to be honest, how much time in the makeup chair?
It was longer than I would have liked. There's a lot of coverage up here with more lights. So I will say that was the first time I ever had to get makeup put on. And yeah, I had a good little chuckle at myself. It is what it is. But I will say, I liked how I looked after it.
By the way, our guest today is Kirk McLean, who, everybody in Vancouver knows and was an integral part of one of the great Stanley Cup runs that the Canucks had in 1994, and I'm sure has some pretty good stories about that and his life after being traded to Vancouver. But we better talk about quickly the 5-game trip ended with a loss in Nashville last night, going 3-2. And in my opinion, the way they played last night in Nashville, there is some level of moral victory when you consider how banged up the hockey club is, and coming home and getting ready for Montreal on Saturday. This team isn't as bad as I think a lot of people anticipated at this point.
No, and I mean, that's a tough 5-game road trip under any circumstance. Like, it's a decent amount of travel and you're playing some pretty good teams. Then they get running into some injury trouble, and of course it's a lot down the middle. And so you have to call up, Sasson was already there for a couple, then Neil Zaman comes back up. All of a sudden you go from, a center ice position where, Rutherford and Alvin have been very vocal since the end of last season that they'd like to find some more depth. And now you're running 3 young guys. Amons has, a decent amount of experience at the NHL level, but you'd still put him in that younger guy category. And, having to move lines around and figure it out, I think they did a pretty good job. They got to be happy with how they got through the road trip. And, last night you could see a bit more, especially as the game went along, that, the gas was out of the tank a little bit and guys having to play bigger roles, play bigger minutes. I've mentioned it before. I'm a big Max Sasson fan. His speed adds an element that is needed in Vancouver, and I think he's going to continue to get better. He had a beautiful goal last night. I thought that's where they made a good adjustment in the game of not trying to kind of move up the ice piece by piece. They started to stretch out the zones a bit more, and Sasson's goal was a benefactor of that. He stretches out. They make a long, nice pass. He protects the puck, beats his guy, and goes 5-hole with it. So like you said, I think there's some moral victories in there. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, moral victories don't get put up on the standings list. So they're going to be right back to work against Montreal here. And when you're in the dressing room, it doesn't matter who's in, who's out. You want to win. You want your team to do well. You want to be a part of that. So it's a real good opportunity for a lot of guys to play elevated roles and show what they can do with those elevated minutes.
And the challenge will be coming off of a 5-game road trip. That first game at home after is always a bear. It is always a bear.
And Montreal's not happy with how their game ended against Edmonton as well, right? So I couldn't believe it. I'm like, if that's an unsportsmanlike penalty, I would have gotten 57 of them a year.
You have to think there was more to it than that. There is something had to be said, or something earlier in the game, and he had been warned not to do it. You have to think.
You really hope so.
Deeper. Well,
you really hope so, because that was pretty light, and I mean that was one of the first games McDavid really kind of took over this season again. And man, when he gets going, it's different.
It certainly is. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have some fun with Kirk McLean, who has made his impact in Vancouver with his playing career and post career, as we will talk about with him at some point. That's Landon Ferraro. I'm John Shannon. Kirk McLean coming up on 100% Canucks.
Shoot, score, win, repeat. On the ice and online. Keep the energy going with NHL Game Zone, the ultimate hockey hub for free-to-play games, prizes, and non-stop competition. Take your best shot with games like NHL Lines, Bingo, Bracket Challenge, and more. Challenge yourself and battle your friends and hockey fans worldwide. Play games for chances to win awesome NHL prizes. NHL Game Zone, your one-stop for hockey free-to-play gaming. Play today at nhl.com/gamezone. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to 100% Canucks, joined by Kirk McLean, the architect of one of the great runs of Vancouver Canuck history in 1994, and certainly a crowd favorite, a member of the Ring of Honor. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. We finally made it happen.
Yeah, we finally made it happen. Well, you know what? It was kind of like your career.
Yeah.
you started in New Jersey, and then you finally had a chance. This, we figured it out how to make it work in Vancouver. I've got to ask you, Thatcher Demko. Just before we talk about your career, Thatcher Demko. You're being a goalie. I'm sure you study goalies. What makes him so effective? What makes him so good?
Well, I study them, but I don't really study them, if you know what I mean. I'm too busy doing other things with the club. But yes, I mean, obviously I get to see Thatcher game in, game out. And listen, he's a world-class goaltender that has had some injury problems, which we all know, and serious injury problems. So if he can find a way to maintain good health and or if he does have a little tweak here or there, keep it to a dull roar, if you will, and play through it. I mean, without a doubt, at the moment, they certainly need their goaltending, not just him, but Lankinen as well, because of the injuries that are happening in front of them.
So when it comes to playing the game in 2025 versus when you played, is there a difference in the position now?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the way the goaltenders play now, what the average size is, 6'3", 6'4", maybe. They play most of it in the butterfly position. They're amazing athletes, the way they can move laterally in their butterfly and push off vertically out into cutting down the angle, if you will. It blows me away. There's no chance in hell that I would be able to do that, even back in my day. We were taught to stand up as much as you could and cut the angle down. If you had to go down on the butterfly, you could use it. And of course, the 2-pad slide was kind of a desperation move. As you see a lot of goaltenders now, when they lunge a lot for desperation. And I think that's where you see a lot of the injuries come from, because that's they're in an unnatural position to begin with. And then they have to do this quick lunge, and I cringe every time, no matter who the goaltender is, that they're not going to blow their hammy out or their groin. I mean, it looks like it hurts when they're making the save.
Do you think, for everything you just kind of laid out there, do you think there's an opportunity for a goalie now to come along? Vasilevsky was probably the last one to really kind of take over in this sense, but can they handle playing a major amount of games like you guys used to be able to do?
Well, you think they would, because the travel's better, 100% better. Their nutrition is better. Their sports science is better.
Hold on. Nutrition is better. Are you telling me that all those burgers you ate really the way to do it?
We weren't when we were going on the road, we would practice and then we'd race to Arby's or McDonald's to grab some before we jumped on the commercial flight. And then we usually had to have a layover in Chicago or Minnesota or something like that. Where now they have their team meals in their locker room and or on the flight. And the management, the coaching staff, they're very good at maintenance days they have now. Right. They have mandatory days off. I believe it's 2 days on the road, 2 days at home each month. So we had to beg for a day off. We would fly in. There's rules where when they fly back after a road trip, there's no practice. So there's plenty of time to get rest, and it confuses me sometimes, mainly because of the position that teams get themselves in, where they still refuse to play a goaltender back to back. I don't know why, especially if it's a short trip. If they're only going from New Jersey to New York or New York to Boston, I mean, it's not a long trip, and you usually can get enough rest. I know you kind of want to weigh the workload the night before, but come on. I mean, it's the players got to do it. Why can't the goaltenders do it?
You sound like Connor Hellebuck, because Connor Hellebuck would play every night.
Well, I mean, they're big guys. They should be able to handle it. I know there's a lot of stress on the body. The game isn't as physical against the goaltenders now either, because they're protected by the rules. The players can't crash a net. They can't fall on top of you, accidentally fall on top of you, whatever it may be. It's the modern day game. I guess you want to have both goaltenders going just in case something happens. It's tougher to, as you know, with the salary cap, if the number one goalie goes down, it's tougher to make a trade to get another guy in.
When you were young, did you always want to be a goalie? Did you know that from the start?
Absolutely not. I started as a forward. I was a left winger in house league hockey, and prior to that, just a full year of hockey school, just learning the game and working on my skills. I just kind of literally fell into the position where I think it was my second year of house league hockey, where we needed a goalie halfway through the year, and I gave it the hands up along with one other person, and really enjoyed it and had success at it and stuck with it. So, growing up in Toronto, my heroes were Davey Keon, Daryl Sittler, Jacques Plante, Bernie Parent, then Paul Matier came along. So I really, emulated myself, and after Jacques and Bernie, to be honest with you, that's kind of who I stuck with. Even when Jacques was at the end and then Bernie moved back to Philadelphia. I was a Bernie Parent fan, not much of a Philadelphia fan, but quite ironic because my minor hockey in the MTHL back there was the Don Mills Flyers, and we had Philadelphia Flyer colors.
Were your parents, your dad, were they all right with the decision? My older brother was a defenseman and then became a goalie. And I remember my dad brought him out in the backyard and started to take shots on him, trying to discourage him. And before he knew it, he was taking slap shots at him. My brother was laughing. Yeah. What was that like in your household?
They were really supportive. And it was early enough in my hockey career. I was only, 6, 7 years old. So who knows if I was going to carry it on. And back then, the equipment was supplied by the association. So, secondhand skates I had to get through my dad, but everything else was supplied through the organization, basically right up until I hit Pee Wee, when it got kind of serious and I jumped to the MTHL, because I went through, a couple of tiers before I made it to AAA, or major as they call it now, House League, Scarborough Hockey Association, which was kind of like an A- league, and then went into AA with the Don Valley Villagers, and then from there to the Don Mills Flyers and Pee Wee.
Man, when you were playing for the Don Mills Flyers, the concept of that team, I mean, you weren't the only guy that played in the NHL from that team. You had guys. It was it became a factory, didn't it?
It did, and then we had, some had a cup of coffee, but there was a couple that went on have Peter Zezel, I played with, bless his soul. But you're right. A bunch of guys that came through and had, 1 or 2 year careers, full careers in the NHL, but also played a long time in American Hockey League. Matthew Deje, Peter Duras, Ken Savern, Gary McColgan, my goalie partners, Sean Evoy, Peter Abrick, Andrew McBain I played with as well. So yes, it was a factory where we kind of took over from the Wexford organization, which were big, especially when they went through and they won the Wrigley's Cup that one year. They I think they had Brian Bellows and a few other players in that team.
When did you know that you could make a living at this game?
That's a good question. I got asked a lot about that, along with.
That means it's not a great question.
Yeah. Well, it is. It is. I mean, it's a hard one to. I mean, as a kid, I think you're going. Well, my dream is to play in the NHL because growing up in Toronto, the Toronto Maple Leafs were the big thing. My second love is soccer, which I played to a high level as well, just under Peter Zezel, and I guess. You get into midget hockey. Can we call it midget hockey now? I think it's U18 or U17.
Yeah. You can call it midget hockey. You can call it.
Yeah. And, that's when things get obviously really serious because you're receiving letters from colleges in the U.S., colleges, universities in Canada. Then, of course, agents are knocking on your door and trying to come soliciting and want to give you advice on what to do. I picked the junior route. I played in Oshawa. I think that was the best thing. Was college hockey wasn't kind of in the radar for where I was from, and Oshawa being at that time 30-40 minutes down the road, it was a wise decision for me.
So you get drafted in 1984, and over the next couple of years, you play 6 games for the Devils. You're down in Maine, and then you get traded to Vancouver. Were you one of those guys, just like I feel like every one of us was, where you get drafted and you think, I'm spending my entire career with the Devils?
Absolutely. Again, you feel like you're kind of bulletproof. I got called up right out of junior to play my first 2 games, at the end of New Jersey season before they didn't make the playoffs. But, you feel kind of a little cocky, I guess, saying, okay, I held my own. We'll see what happens next year. And of course, at that time, there was myself, Craig Billington, Chris Terreri, the sacrificial lamb, Alain Chevier, who they kept it up to take the brunt of the heat. But Chico Resch just retired. Carl Friesen. We just lost Sammy St. Laurent. I got traded to Detroit. So we had a plethora of goaltenders. And of course, Sean Burke was coming up behind us. He's a year behind. And then, 4 or 5 years later, Martin Brodeur. But going into, I guess, camp in 1986, 87, we had a plethora of goaltenders, and maybe something was going to happen. It's a good place to be for teams. Everybody needs a goaltender at some point. The trade is made basically the first day of camp. Max McNabb had retired, and Lou Lamoriello was his first year with the team, and we were just about to go for our physicals, and I get a call. I was staying at John McLean's place at the time because we'd gone in early to skate. And I got a call from Bob Hoffenmeyer, who was the assistant coach at the time, let me know that Lou wanted to talk to me. I hadn't met Lou yet. So I walk in and it was basically, we've made a trade. You and somebody else is involved. I can't tell you who it is because the fax hasn't gone through yet. All that kind of stuff. And then, of course, I found out who it was on the plane when Greg Adams came walking on.
And who were you traded for?
Patrick Sundstrom.
It was Patrick Sundstrom.
Patrick Sundstrom, yeah. So who was, I guess, a fan favorite here. Him and Tony Tanti had a thing going. And, thank God well, he went on and had a pretty good career in New Jersey as well. And, at the time, I think I was kind of the throw-in with Greg Adams. I was an unknown. I played, as Landon mentioned, most of my first year pro down in the minors. So it was actually Bob McCammon and Brian Burke who saw me a lot, because Berkey at the time had just started up his agency, was a player agent, and Bob, I believe, was a scouting for Edmonton. I think he was, but he did have a place down in Portland. As you know, he came through the Philadelphia and Portland. The Maine Mariners used to be Philadelphia's team at one time.
So the reaction to being traded to Vancouver was, I'm going to get a chance to play, or, oh my God, it's a long way from Toronto.
Well, that's pretty much it. I'd never been anywhere past Calgary. I went to the Max Midget tournament 2 years in a row. Never been to Vancouver. Knew nothing about it other than the fact that 82, obviously the 82 Stanley Cup, or my dad listening to Foster Hewitt on the radio at 10 o'clock at night, the Leafs and Vancouver. That's it. I really didn't have a clue what was about to happen or where I was coming. But I tell you what, I was in Greg Adams' ear the whole way here. Him being from Nelson. Right. And it was just fantastic. I can remember we landed in the evening, and it was a beautiful night. And then wake up in the morning, hop on the bus, and off to Duncan for my first training camp here in Vancouver.
So you end up playing 41 games your first year. What was the messaging when you got there? Did they tell you we're going to give you a chance to take the reins, or was that you just powering through?
I think they didn't say much at the beginning, because we went with a 3 goalie system for a while. Myself, the King, Richard, and Frank Caprice. Frank didn't get a lot of action in, and then was finally sent down to Fredericton, and the King and I kind of alternated, and then at the trading deadline, they moved Richard to Hartford and brought in Steve Weeks, who was fantastic for me. I think they literally brought him in to kind of mentor me, to become a better professional, to be honest with you, because I was still young and dumb, thinking that I was the cat's meow, and I didn't, need to practice that much harder or any of that kind of stuff. But he certainly came in and showed me what it was like to be a pro.
By the way, Frank Caprice, would you have played against Caprice when he was in Peterborough?
No, he was already gone. Yeah.
Oh, he was gone. Okay, so there was no OHL rivalry there.
No. He had a few years on me, so he was already gone.
And did Steve Weeks then basically become a? I mean, there weren't goalie coaches very often around, were there?
We had Caesar. Caesar came in like maybe once every 2 months. he was involved. I think him and his brother had a sports store or something like that. But that was it. Caesar came in literally once, maybe 2 months, every 2 months, just to kind of go through a little session. There was no video or anything, that kind of stuff. So Weeksy was still, young enough and wanted to compete, to play, without a doubt. So there was still some healthy competition there, but he was certainly a big part of what I needed to learn on how to become a pro goalie.
By the way, you couldn't play the game the way Caesar played it.
Those are the guys that I looked up to, right? It was he was the tall goalie for back in the day, as you know. Right. So, but fantastic goaltender, and we shared the same kind of philosophies in the game, and he knew very well of my mentor, who was a fellow by the name of Ian Young, who was my goalie coach in Oshawa, who played in Oshawa with Bobby Orr, and was him and Bobby were the two things coming up to Boston, but an unfortunate eye injury ended his career. But they all played against each other. Caesar was at St. Mike's, and Ian was in Oshawa, so they certainly were very familiar with each other.
Yeah. So 89, that playoff series against Calgary in 89, would you define that as your
Coming out?
Coming out?
Absolutely. I think, it certainly was, because we had a team, a hardworking team. We did have some skill on that team, a lot of skill on that team. But unfortunately, we had some rough seasons. Back in those days, you could get in with 80 something points into the playoffs. And we did that. And we gave Calgary a good scare going to Game 7. If we had video replay now, would Joel's goal counted? I don't know.
Was it kicked in?
I claim it was kicked in, but he probably claims it was just he was going to the net and it went off his skate.
But it did prepare you for 94, though, didn't it?
For sure it did. We went from 89 to 94. We had some really good teams in the early 90s. We competed for President's Cup a couple of years and lost out near the ends of each season. We had really good teams, and we underachieved in the playoffs, from myself out. We just couldn't get over that hump of the first round or the second round. We'd get past the first round, get in the second round, and we couldn't pull it off. And then we get to 94. We had a lackluster year. We squeaked into the playoffs, I think, with 4 or 5 games left in the season. And then, we go up against Calgary again, who was favored, or one of the favorites to win. And, we win the first game, and then we go down 3-1. And I don't know, you start doubting yourself. And because I tried not to read papers, there was no social media or listen to the news, can he win the big games, or can he take the team to another level? Is he a playoff goalie? All that kind of stuff. And for some reason, the Pat and Ricky Lee and the rest of the coaching staff kept us loose and positive. And it was literally, the cliches came out, one shift at a time, one period at a time, one game at a time. And that's the way we approached it. And every game we just our confidence kept building, and our belief obviously kept building. And if we were going to win it in triple overtime, it didn't matter.
So you get through Calgary in Game 7, and then you guys make pretty quick work of Dallas and Toronto. Yeah. Like, once you got past Dallas, was it just like kind of a light bulb moment for your team?
Well, it was. I mean, on the series, winning in 5, it seems like we made quick. They were tough series, though. It's not easy to win, as you guys know, in the National Hockey League, and it's a grind. Especially in playoffs. It's back then super physical, clutching, grabbing, but fast skating, fast moving, long games, and the fact that we were able to pull it off in 5 games, both of them, Toronto as well, was amazing, and for me was a big sigh of relief getting past Dallas, and then kind of a big we're going into Toronto here, hometown. Never had any success at Maple Leaf Gardens, even through junior hockey when we played the Marlies. The only success, I think, was when I played the Timmy Tyke finals and we won it. And that was it. And ironically won the Ian Young goaltending award. So I didn't know what to expect, and of course the first 2 games we split. I had good games, and then we come back and win the 3 in a row here in Vancouver. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, of course, that was the old days of the 2-3-2 you're talking about.
Was it the 1 year? I think they only did it the 1 year, and that was it.
Well, basically, at a certain point, the teams would have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And
the team with the better
record
had the choice of starting on the road or at home.
Yeah.
It's the way the American League still goes.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I first got here, we played best 3 out of 5 in the first series, and then there was too many upsets, so they changed it because they wanted the better team. They thought the better teams could, if it went to 4 out of 7, could the cream would rise to the top.
Kirk, I got a date. The first series I ever produced for Hockey Night in Canada was a Philadelphia Vancouver series. The best 2 out of 3.
Wow. Wow.
And can you imagine, best 2 out of 3 with travel?
Yeah.
It's not as if Philadelphia is next door. So.
No, this is true, and not easy to get to.
Well, we used to take that. I ended up traveling with the Canucks that year, and Jake Milford was the manager. And I said, Jake, is there any way I can get on your? They had air. It used to be called Air Putt Putt. It was Air Ontario.
Yeah.
And you'd fly because it was a propeller plane. Because Toronto had rules you couldn't land after midnight with a jet.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we'd stay overnight in Toronto and then fly out in the morning. It was crazy.
Yeah, and they I believe when I first started in playoffs, we went back to back in playoffs too.
Oh, sure.
With a day off and then back to back.
Yeah, 2 games somewhere, day off, 2 games the other building. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Which I think is fantastic. Because you want to play, right? I mean, the adrenaline's running. You're beat up and all that kind of stuff, but you want to get back at it, especially if you lose. You don't want to wait a day. You want to get out there and play the next day.
Better than practice.
Well, it's practice. We practice. Don't believe me. We practice in the playoffs.
Is it almost like you get that day off and it gives you time to think about how sore you are? Like you just want to keep rolling at that point.
Totally agree. I mean, like I said, most guys back then didn't have the best habits. If there was a sign of a day off, the night before was probably a fun night, and then it always catches up with you two days later, right? So that's the difference again with the players now. They're pretty good. They can they pick their spots a lot better than what we did.
So you get to game 1 against the Rangers, and you make 52 of 54 saves. Leach hits a crossbar, goes back the other way. Ronning makes the pass. Adams gets a goal. Yeah. You always see the goalie sprinting down the ice to join the celebration. You kind of slowly meandered up. What was going through your head?
I was glad it was over. I was tired, like, you couldn't believe it. And mentally tired more than anything, right? We played a hard game, and then for that specific chance for us to get the 2-on-1 off of a nice bounce off the crossbar, and then Cliffy to have his vision and catch Mike Richter so far out when he passed it across. Gussie one timed it into the empty net, but it was just a big sigh of relief. I don't know if I could have sprinted down the other end. My pads probably weighed about 1,000 pounds at that time, even though they were still the new synthetic type of stuffing in the pads. Right. But I was knackered, that's for sure.
Was Madison Square Garden the most intimidating arena to play in, or was there one that jumped out at you? You said you didn't like Maple Leaf Gardens, but Maple Leaf Gardens was intimidating because of what it was all about, and family and all that kind of stuff, and the egg-shaped corners and the worst lighting in the world. TV lights on one side, and as of Montreal was the same thing. MSG, I didn't find it intimidating. I enjoyed playing there. The New York crowd is crazy, as you know. They can be ruthless, not just with the visiting team, but with the home team. But they do really respect a good effort by any athlete. If you put a good effort out, and they'll appreciate that. And it was more the off days and dealing with Pavel had to deal with death threats, all that kind of stuff, and you try to the ringer off your hotel phones, people calling you in the mornings and all that kind of stuff. But, I loved it. I loved playing there. I didn't find, the only rink I found, well, maybe 2, Edmonton, obviously going into Edmonton with who they had on their team, and maybe Pittsburgh. I could Pittsburgh, for some reason, I couldn't get my bearings right in there, my angles, nothing, and never had, good games there as well. Of course, you
maybe,
do know.
maybe they had the two players in particular that were pretty intimidating.
By the way, you do know that in Pittsburgh they cheated and moved the goal line out, so Mario had more room behind the net.
Oh yeah, but they also
which is
that.
why you couldn't. Which is why your angles probably were never the same, right?
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, and then Philadelphia at the one end, they deadened the boards for Hexy so he could come out and play it. The guy, I think it was in Buffalo, guy behind. On the visiting, because we went out where the Zamboni came out, so the guy would kick it. So
sure,
the wrapper, all that kind of stuff. That was the joy of the old school home rinks. I mean, every rink was different for the most part. Teams built their teams for the specific ice surface and rink, and now it's all generic and everything's pretty much the same.
You mentioned Pavel. What was it like to watch him play on a nightly basis?
Well, it was pretty spectacular. I remember playing him for the first time in the World Championships in 1990. He hadn't come over, but there was a rumor about this. I think he was 17 or 18. He had to wear a full cage in the World Championships back then. And, I got a glimpse of them. And then, a year later, two later, we found out he's coming to Vancouver. And then, of course, he arrives in Vancouver. His speed and just his joy for the game, his want to score goals, everything was infectious. And that first shift or second shift he was on, and I set the puck up for him, and he just comes flying by and goes end to end. And we knew we were in for quite a haul with this guy. And he was an awesome player without a doubt. It's too bad that his career got cut short with knee injuries. He was really the kind of the McDavid of now, as far as excitement and being able to do things at high speed, stick handle in a phone booth or whatever you want. But he was also super physical, as we all know. He stood up for himself, but he certainly took a beating because he loved to score goals. And he was a wonderful teammate. He took a bad rap, I think, because he wasn't very sociable. He wasn't, out there in the community doing a lot of stuff, or, he found it tough with the media sometimes. But when he was amongst us, he was one of the guys. He loved pulling the pranks. He loved to, go for a couple of drinks or whatever it may be, lunches, dinners, and him and Gino had their special relationship, and we knew they were both going to be there for us. So after whatever team meetings we had, if they wanted to go do their own thing, there was no bother about that, because we knew they were going to be there the next day doing it for us.
Yeah. So I got go for it.
No, you go, Landon.
I was just going to say, I was lucky enough to get to play in one Game 7 with Detroit, and I was young, and my head was all over the place. You've always thought about it. It's so different for goalies, or at least in my head, I assume that it is. What were your thoughts? I mean, you played other ones before that, but in the finals,
Stanley Cup finals,
it's a little bit different.
For sure. I mean, again, you're getting to you've got that far to the finals. You've been through some other Game 7s through the first series, and then years passed. But all of it's on the line for that one holy grail that you've dreamt about your whole life to get. And my feeling is, and everybody else is, we were so close knit. We got to that point. Everybody's feeling good. I think you're more nervous away from the rink than you are at the rink, because you can't control anything when you're away from the rink. As soon as you get to the rink, you can control what goes on. You can whatever that may be in the locker room or out in the ice. So it's a little bit more at ease. But for any goalie on any night, not just Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, there's a little bit of nerves after the national anthems. To get that first feel of the puck, that first shot, you're just kind of hoping it's not going to be an important one, if you will. Even sometimes the long wristers from the blue line, you just want to make sure you get your body in front of it, because it's that one little feel that kind of gets you into the game.
Do you play against the other goalie? Really? Do you really compete against the other guy at the other end of the ice?
I never looked at it that way. I looked at it, our team against their team, but I know goalies that do. They want to compete against the other goaltender. I'm assuming that, one center against another center, or our best players against their best players.
But being a skater is different. Being a skater is different. You're always 180 feet away from the other guy.
Yeah, exactly. I never approached it that way. I just approached it. I want to do my job. I always tried to break the game down into 5-minute mini games, and then go from there. I was more worried about trying to win the 5-minute mini games rather than focus on how many saves he's made and how many saves I need to make, or if he made a big save down there, stuff like that. If he made a big save down the other end, then of course you're like, okay, they're going to come down. I gotta pull something off here as well.
Your people love you in Vancouver. I got to see it again for the home opener this year, and then you and Trevor came up and did your guys' little interview up top. You must, this series against the Rangers must get brought up to you multiple times a week. Does it ever get old, or do you love to relive that with fans?
Yeah, I like to relive it because, along with that, and of course the Calgary series, the save, all that kind of stuff comes up, and how can you get tired of it? It was defining moments in my career. Yes, we were bridesmaids, and it was disappointing to us because you play to win, right? You get all that way and we lose. So we what did we get out of it? We got experience out of it. That was it. We didn't accomplish anything other than a conference trophy, but to sit and talk with the fans and the people of Vancouver, because they went through a ride that was incredible, and they've stopped their weddings, or babies being born, whatever it may be, and they're telling their story about what it meant to them, and it's an amazing thing. I have to say, sometimes I don't get it. Like if there's a bunch of us from '94, we're kind of like very humbled at why the community, wherever it may be, still gravitate to that '94 team. I don't 2011 team. My gosh, they had an unbelievable team. I for sure thought they were going to pull it off. '82 team had a bunch of characters, and they were a Cinderella story. Came out of nowhere. Great goaltending, obviously by Richard as well, But I don't know if it's the age group where everybody seems to just want to. I don't know why. Yeah, to be honest with you, I can't figure it out. We're dumbfounded sometimes why people just want to kind of gather and talk about the early '90s or the '94 team in specific.
All right, listen, it was. Well, you're a Toronto boy. They talk about '93 and '94 in Toronto, and they didn't even get to the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah. Well, listen, they had fantastic players, Wendell and Dougie Gilmore, Andrew Chuck. I mean, you can go down the line. They were a powerhouse without a doubt. Felix in goal. It was tough. It really was, and as you guys know. They're starving for another Stanley Cup there. I think, they got to be the longest drought right now going on, I would think.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. So tomorrow night, Saturday night, Montreal's coming to town. There'll be 18,000 people in the crowd, and there'll be 8,000 Canadians fans there. When you were playing in Vancouver,
there was 14,000 Canadian fans and Leaf fans.
So when Toronto and Montreal come to town, there, because we saw it Thursday night. We saw it Thursday night at Edmonton as well. Landon was on the show. We saw it. The following that the old two Canadian teams have is mind-boggling at times. Yeah. But when you're in the crease and your home game, and there's half the crowds cheering for the other team, what would go through your mind?
It's a little disappointing, but it's understandable.
Oh, you were pissed off when you were playing.
Well, really pissed off, to be honest with you. You tune it out at some point, Especially if it's a close game, you really have to tune it out. It's tough if you're losing, and if you're losing by a big score, because then it gets worse, right? Because it gives you it definitely gives you a little bit more motivation to beat them. You try to understand why there's so many Canadians or Leaf fans there. Most of it, you figured out, okay, the grandparents or the parents that are, back in the original 6 days, that's who they had to cheer for, or they've moved from Ontario or Quebec and moved out here, so they continue it on. But it's the younger kids that really don't know anything about it. They've grown up in Vancouver, but they're just doing it because their mom or their grandparents support that team. But you see, I watched a little bit of that Edmonton game, and it's kind of odd even there. Listen, Montreal's doing well this year, so maybe the bandwagons are going to come out a little bit more, which seems to be happening. But we're finding, that other Canadian teams going back east, whether it be into Toronto or Montreal, there's a lot of support for Vancouver, Edmonton now, Winnipeg or whatever, which is great. So it shows you where the game's in a good place. There's hockey fans everywhere, and they're not afraid to support the team that they want to support. It's not, you wish they support their home team more, but they're supporting hockey in general, and I'm good with that.
Last question to you, Landon.
Well, you do quite a bit of charity work in Vancouver, and I was fortunate enough to get to play in the Canucks Autism Network tournament with you last week, which, by the way, the one time I looked over when you were playing, you pulled off a pretty nice toe drag. Like, you're a half decent player out there. You're feeling it.
Listen, I love playing out. I haven't played goal since the day I retired. At the beginning, I was actually playing center. As now I just drop back and kind of move the puck and let the younger guys do it. But I enjoy it. When I was younger, when I played shinny hockey or whatever, I'd skate around, work on my stick handling skills, my puck handling skills. I took pride in that when I played as a goaltender, as a puck moving goaltender. I used to toe drag or look guys off when I handle the puck as a goalie. So I like to think I have some pretty good hockey sense. The speed isn't quite there, but like I said, I try to move it as fast as I can. But it's fun. A lot of goalies do that, and I've played against Billy Ranford plays out, so he's blocked shots. Believe it or not, like he'll lay down and block shots. He's crazy, but he can skate well. Eddie Lack played last year in the Can tournament, and he can skate like the wind. Believe it or not, has great hands, great shot. Cujo plays out. Marty Turco plays out. Belfort, everybody plays out, and I think you get to the point it hurts, right? I mean, and if you're an alumni goaltender or you're playing in these tournaments, the pressure's always on the goaltender, no matter what level at. And then, of course, if you're an NHL or a retired NHL, there's going to be more because everybody's trying to score on you, and you're thinking is nobody's going to score on me, so you don't want to be embarrassed, and you've gone your whole 35 plus years of playing goaltender, and it wears on you mentally. Last thing you want to do is be out there and having to worry about being scored on. Never mind hurting yourself.
That's like goalies wanting to be skaters is like rock stars always want to be athletes, and athletes always want to be rock stars. So
absolutely, that's exactly what it is. The odd guy, the odd forward or defenseman doesn't mind going in the net until he takes one, where it hurts. And then it's like, okay, I've had enough of that. Yeah.
My first year when I retired, my buddy Martin Jones does like a family fun game every summer. And I had no interest in putting my gear on, but all of a sudden me and him switched gear. So I went in net for the first time ever. But you had no one to talk to in there. It's pretty boring, but it's a lot.
And that's where the mental side of the game, because you have to keep concentrating on what's going on. You don't have time to really sit back and think about what's for dinner that night. But I put the gear on 4 or 5 years ago when we had an anniversary, 50 years I think it was for for the club, and I had to skate out to the blue line from the Zamboni, and that was the longest skate I've ever done in my life because one, it's the first time I had goalie skates on in 20 years or whatever. Two, I had Dan Cloutier's old goalie skates. I had a firefighter who Pat O'Neill had found on Facebook that had a replica look of my old gear, and it was still the new age goalie gear, which I had to learn how to skate with the night before, and the morning of, I was out skating around the ice trying to get used to all this stuff. I had I don't even know whose pants I had on. I had a friend of mine's body armor on, a shorter guy who played goal, because I tried on at that time the Canuck goalies, and I put it on. I looked like an idiot. Like, it didn't even look like me. I couldn't even move. And it
looked like your kid wearing your dad's jacket type of deal.
Basically, that's what it was. So I used my friend's body armor, and then my mask was mine. The gloves were the firefighters, and the stick was mine. The stick Patty O'Neill pulled out from the bowels of the arena, and I actually had I signed it to him, so I had my signature on it.
And it probably weighed 5 pounds more than the goalie sticks now.
Oh yeah, it was. And I talked to all the other guys. Stan Schmiel, Dennis Kearns came out, and everybody did the same thing. They all went out the night before, skated somewhere. I actually just went to the arena and did it. Dennis Kearns, I think he went to Hollyburn and went out with a walker at first to get his balance before he geared up to go out there. So it was quite interesting, of course. And then you get to the blue line, and everything kicks in. You're like, I don't want to get off here. This is we want to play. I looked at Steamer. Steamer was standing beside me, and Troy Stetcher was on the other side of me. Stetcher's just freaking out, going, "This is awesome. This is amazing." And then Steamer and I look at each other and go, "You want to line up?" I was going to go on the net, and he was going to. That would have been so cool if that would have happened.
Hey, this has been great, Kirk. Thanks for the time.
Well, thanks for finally making it happen, and continued success with your podcast.
Great. That's Kirk McLean. Landon and I'll be back after this on 100% Canucks.
Face Off Inside the NHL returns, taking you deeper behind the scenes than ever before. See it all from the star-studded Four Nations Face Off tournament.
Us against the world, boys.
To the adrenaline of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
I'm scared of you guys.
With candid interviews and backstage access, experience the sacrifice, the rivalries, and the determination that define NHL greatness.
Just when I thought last year couldn't be topped, here we are.
A new season of Face Off Inside the NHL. Watch now only on Prime Video.
I was worried when we booked Kirk that we might get 20 minutes, but Kirk enjoys telling stories. That's nice.
Yeah, like I mentioned at the end of the interview there, I got to play in that Cannes tournament with him, and watching him hold court in a dressing room and just be back in his element, it's awesome. It's so fun to see all the guys that had played before me and guys that are more recently retired kind of back in one area, and man, like, he's just firing it out there. He's got a big smile on the entire time. He's got minutes to talk to every single person that was a part of that weekend. For me, not that I needed to see it again, but it's another reminder of why he's such a big figure in Vancouver Canucks, in the organization and around the city. He loves this team. He loved his time. He still lives here, and he genuinely enjoys talking to fans and making sure they have a good moment when they get that with him.
And it's funny, maybe it's the guys we're talking to. Chris Higgins was raised on Long Island. Tony Tanti was raised in Southern Ontario, as was Kirk. And they have made no bones about it that they want to live in the Lower Mainland. They want to live in Vancouver. They love what the West Coast offers. It is really one of the great storylines of what the Canucks have meant, not to the fans but to the players, and getting to know what a great city Vancouver is. There are those of us that think it's the greatest city in the world. We're biased. We grew up there. We believe in it. But it's when people who have been, for work reasons, move to Vancouver and then they stay. That's the real endorsement you get about the city in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, just from my own experience, we moved to Vancouver when my dad retired. We had no family ties to Vancouver. We're from Trail, BC. It's, a 7-hour drive east. And even as a 10-year-old coming into this city, it just felt different. I was lucky. I got to live in Atlanta and LA, and not that I really remember New York, but got to be a New York guy for a little bit. Vancouver is a different place. It's aesthetically beautiful, but the fact that, from where I live, I can be at the beach in 15 minutes. I can be at Grouse Mountain in 5 minutes. Like, where else do you get that type of access? And then on top of it, the people are great. You feel welcome right away. And for the guys that move here for work, they feel that right when they get here. And it's a tough place to leave. Once you start setting those little bit of roots, they grow pretty quick.
Once you're a British Columbian, you're a British Columbian.
Yeah. What you think you're out, they pull you back in, right?
I just tell people I live in exile. All right, Landon, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks for listening and watching this edition of 100% Canucks.